Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Greater Good podcast. We put it on here in Attorney King Studios in Coronado. It's lovely. Unfortunately, the air conditioning is broken here, so my guest and I, we have a big fan behind us. Actually, it's two women with palm fronds. They're going like that, bowing to us. It's quite nice. I'm really excited to have my guest here today, Jim Floros, who's probably like the godfather of fundraising and nonprofits in San Diego County. And hi, Jim.
How you doing? And you know what? Speaking of fans, I've always been your biggest fan, Jeff. So,
oh my gosh, here it starts already. I thought we were going to tell the truth here today.
Yeah, exactly.
But not going to happen. I can see that right away. So for everyone here listening, and I think the numbers are up to what, 50,000 according to Brett. I just want to make sure everyone knows that in San Diego County in particular, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations. And Jim has always been sort of the guide star for most of those top level individuals that are running those nonprofits. And the reason is because you're a remarkable human being.
It's very kind of you.
Well, you're welcome. But it's true. I mean, if you look at your history, and I actually did read your bio, which is a first for me. Normally, I just do this show and I wing it. But I thought, wow, this is so important because the message is so important. Because without the nonprofits here in San Diego County, we can't rely on government to accomplish what we need to get done with our citizens in our communities here in San Diego County. So the nonprofit backbone groups, like the ones that you've managed to lift up from where they came from to where they are today, without that sort of, nonprofit support, we'd be in trouble.
Well, absolutely. I'm a career nonprofit guy right out of college, not really what I intended to do. But then once you kind of get into it and you fall in love with the concept of what is your journey, what is your legacy,
Right.
and what is your life meant? And you can go to work and earn a good living, but are you making the world a better place? And, everybody's life ends the same way. So if you're not making an impact and helping people along the way, then why bother?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's kind of like at the end of your life, if you look at how you've loved, that's really the measure of who you are as a person. And nonprofit, just by the pure definition, it really is about the love. It's really about the passion. It's all about the giving. And this show, I created this show a couple of years ago, and we've had some just wonderful, wonderful people on this show here. Producer Sarah and I, we have a lot of fun with them, but we've learned a lot about people in San Diego County that really do make a difference. And so, tell us a little bit about what your position is on what you think what difference you made in San Diego County.
Well, like I said, you have one life to live, and you want to be able to look back on it and say, what is my life meant? As I've gotten older, the idea of legacy is really important to me. And I know in my heart that I've made, the world a better place. I started out at the world headquarters of an international health development and was there for 7 years. And the work we did and the lives we saved and through immunizations and clean water systems and what have you, really powerful stuff. And then, went over to the Burn Institute. Right. And it was a very small grassroots organization at the time. And we built that agency to be, the top burn foundation in North America, and the number of burn survivors whose lives we changed, people at their lowest moment, families whose lives were turned upside down because of a severe burn injury. We work really closely with the Regional Burn Center. That was just insanely powerful. And when a mother comes to you with tears in her eyes and says, thanks you for what you did for their child. Right. And then all the fire and burn prevention we did too. So we prevented a lot of people from having to go through the horrific experience of a burn. And then we went to the food bank, and I could almost stop there because food insecurity, one of the greatest challenges our society faces. And I think a lot of people kind of knew that, but they really didn't fully embrace who really is food insecure. It's people that your kids are going to school with, right? So it's all around you. And then of course there was this thing, the COVID pandemic, and boy, I'll tell you, that was the toughest year and a half of my life, but also maybe the most professionally satisfying. And going from feeding 350 to 600,000 people a month,
that's incredible.
Just crazy. But you look back on all that and go, you know what? it's a life well lived. You know, I'm proud of my achievements. I didn't do it alone. Obviously, you
Right.
surround yourself with really great people, and I've always been fortunate enough to be able to do that. But like I said, it's all about the journey.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, from 300 to 600,000, so you doubled. And then during the pandemic, I know that the money really flowed, but the need was exponentially larger probably than the money.
Yeah, it was crazy. And we're about 6 weeks into the pandemic, and I was asked to be a keynote speaker at Aligned University School of Business, and they wanted me to talk about leading an organization through a crisis. And so I was trying to kind of come up with a clever title for the talk, and I realized about 6 weeks into the pandemic, we were doing really well. I mean, we didn't flinch, and we pivoted, and we created new strategies, and we were doing really well, and other organizations were not, and other feeding organizations were not. And we were kind of carrying the burden of San Diego County. And I realized everything we did prior to the pandemic is the reason why we did so well during the pandemic. And so the title of my talk was Build a Ship to Weather the Storm, because that's what we had done.
Right.
You know, I've always been, recognized for the fact that I always run my nonprofits like a business, right? It's a business. It's a serious and a very important business. And so we had established, an outstanding development program, great relationship with donors and community leaders and volunteers and the media and elected officials. And we had that reputation. So that was in place. The machine was there. We adjusted and adapted as we needed to, but the fundamentals were all there. And I think that's why we did well. And then, the fundraising machine was there before. And get off another tangent about fundraising being the most important thing a nonprofit does. But we raised a lot of money and we spent a lot of money.
Well, of course. Yeah. Yeah. I have a saying that uses practice for what happens before what happens.
100%.
And so, here we are. So yeah, practice makes never perfect, but certainly a lot better. Well, that's it's a great story, but you mentioned something about a school, and I read an article just recently about how you're kind of a big deal in RIPON, Wisconsin.
Oh, yes.
So maybe you can tell us a little story about Mr. Big Deal in this 7,000 citizen community in Wisconsin.
Well, I am from Mayberry, so small town in Wisconsin, population 7,053, kind of cosmopolitan for a small town because it's the world headquarters of Speed Queen washers and dryers, and it's the birthplace of the Republican Party.
That's right.
Depending on your viewpoint, but it was also the Liberal Party back then, so you can play both sides. It was great. It was a great place to grow up, and it was very, 2 police cars, and you knew the police chief because you went to high school with him, and it was just very sweet, holistic kind of environment. And then, I guess it was last year, I was named the Ripon High School Alumni of the Year, and it was like a big deal. And so my wife and I went back, and so there was a breakfast, and then I spoke at the pep rally because they always do it over homecoming weekend. And so I spoke at the pep rally about social responsibility and giving back and all that. And then they said, well, at 3 p.m. you're going to show up here because you're going to ride in the homecoming parade.
Wow.
And I was a little disappointed. So I'm in the back of a convertible, and I was a little disappointed because I was so far in the front of the parade, just behind the guys, the VFW guys, with their flags. Sure. And I said, well, I'd rather be back by the marching band. They said, well, no, you're the Grand Marshal. So we have video of it and photos of and the home street, main street's probably about 200 yards long, so it was a pretty short parade, but it was. And now my face is on a plaque on a wall to be there forever, apparently. So that was a lot of fun.
There it is. Let's hear it. He is a big deal. He's the first one we've had on here that's a real big deal.
First one that's been the alumni of the year of Ripon High School.
I'll tell you that. That's something. So did Cheryl get to go along with you on the convertible, or was
she was offered and politely declined?
Is that right? Yes. She didn't want to take away.
She goes, well, I'm going to run alongside and take photos.
Make sure that people are clapping.
Exactly, not throwing tomatoes. I was getting heckled though, because a lot of people I went to school with, it's like I said, everybody knows everybody.
Right.
So there were some people heckling me from the sidelines.
So you said 7,053, but I looked at the consensus this morning, and it's 7,852.
Oh my gosh.
So, there's some people have snuck in.
Yeah, I've been saying 7,053 for about 30 years, so I guess I'll have to update that.
You gotta get your stats up.
It's also the home of Ripon College, which is actually I know Spencer Tracy went there, and El Giro went there, and Harrison Ford flunked out there. And so,
did he now?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, as it should be. So the Republican Party, yeah, I read that article. That was really kind of cool. But that was in like 1854, I believe. That was little small church, a little small bit still there. It's been,
you weren't there, right?
I was not. No, I came the year later.
A year later. Yeah, the little white schoolhouse. The little white schoolhouse.
Yeah, it was really kind of cute. But you made a really interesting point, because the Republican Party back then represented the liberal viewpoint of America. And so, when you say the birthplace of the Republican Party, I'm sure a lot of people, their sphincters kind of tighten up a little bit.
Not exactly the way I would put it, but yes, you are true. That is true. And, it depends on where I am. I say it, and then maybe a hardcore Republican, yeah, Ripon. I'm like, well, yeah, it was a liberal party, but that's okay. Go with it.
Yeah, I like it because it can go either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, especially in San Diego, which is, I guess, are we still a predominantly Republican city?
I think, I don't know. I've always prided myself in working both sides of the aisle pretty well. I'm Switzerland, but yeah, it depends. In Coronado, where we are right now, yeah.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. So we're in Coronado at the Attorney King Studios, which is a lovely place most of the time. But so tell me about what you consider to be your greatest accomplishment.
There were, at the Burn Institute, our relationship always wasn't great with the Regional Burn Center. So that was going to be my legacy, that I was going to bridge our relationship. And I did that. So that was a top one. But you have to go back to COVID. Everything's about COVID, something our society, at least our generations, have never experienced. And I think that probably is my greatest accomplishment, because I helped lead an organization through a new territory that nobody understood. We were exempt from the executive order. We were on the job every day at the warehouse, out in the community. And, I said to my staff, this is our moment in time. We can't screw this up, because the community, it's not just about feeding people. This is an entire community that is depending on us. And we realized early on that we were kind of the buffer between a community working through a disaster and pandemonium, because you hear about women getting in physical altercations over toilet paper at Costco. Imagine what would happen if people thought there wasn't going to be food, and you'd have looting and rioting in grocery stores. And even people from some grocery store chains actually thanked us, because our messaging was always, everything's gonna be fine, we got plenty of food, this is what we do, this is what we signed up for, and just trying to calm the community that we got this. And I think being kind of the tip of the spear for San Diego, that's our greatest achievement.
So you were really like the Red Cross for a disaster.
We really were. And people who had never had to ask for food suddenly are there, and people are driving up in nice cars because they had a catering business, and suddenly they're out of business, and now and they're hurting. And so in the service industry, which is a huge part of our economy, and those people, and a lot of people were reluctant to ask for help, and we also said it's okay to ask for help. That's what we're here for. And just really proud of the entire organization, my staff, just as dedicated and working so hard and long hours, and donors who came out. We had donors that had never given us more than $50,000 a year, suddenly sending me a check for $1 million. Oh my gosh, that's a good day to be me. Let me tell you about that. and it was just like, it was so gratifying. And if you'll indulge me a little short story. So I am old school, fundraising, development, whatever. So I would learn from my first nonprofit CEO that I worked with, that you personally sign thank you letters, and you can't do all of them, but for us and for me, it was always anybody 500 and over, they get a personal letter signed by me with a note, right? And then we would research it, and so we'd find out what their background is. So if they were a long-term donor, or I knew them, or I toured them, or what have you, there'd be a little extra note. Right. And so in a 1-year period during the pandemic, I signed 45,000 letters.
Oh my
I
Lord.
would come home with a stack of 2,000 to 3,000 letters. My wife would look like me like I was
Yeah.
crazy. And I'm like, yeah, but these are the people.
Yeah. Without them.
And these are the people that are making it possible. And I would write notes, and then it would be a new COVID donor. It'd be their second gift or third gift. And, I guess it's old school, but like there's,
No.
if we're doing a lot of media, right? Oh, the guy I just saw on TV, he knows who I am, and he just wrote me a note, and I matter. I'm going to make another gift.
I'm having a hard time using that term old school. I think it's the school.
I agree with you.
That's the one and only way to reach out to people, because
And I was the school when I was 24. I mean,
Right.
because that's how you're taught, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's those foundational things that separate the successful people from the unsuccessful people.
Yeah.
Even though it's a handwritten small note, it shows that you cared enough to reach out to them. And it's of course, like in everything, it's about relationships.
It is. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. So what do you like? What's in the future for you, Jim?
Well, I left the food bank and now focusing on my consulting business, which I started back in the days when I was with the Burn Institute, because I had a lot of burn foundations in North America asking for help. And I thought, well, I might as well get paid for this.
Sure.
And now I'm full-fledged consulting. And right now it's a lot of referrals and haven't even launched the website yet. And then I have an old mentor friend who's kind of, to me, the guru of nonprofit consulting, Cliff Underwood. Been a mentor of mine since my 30s. And so we're partnering up, and he relocated to San Antonio because that's where the grandkids are, but he's here a lot, and he's the consultant that brought the Midway, down. So he is the guy, taught me most of what I know. And so we're having a great time, and there's a lot of great nonprofits out there, but there's a lot of nonprofits that need a little love, a little TLC. Maybe they have the heart but don't have the business mind, or they have the business mind but don't have the heart. So we're getting a lot of interest in signing clients and actually making a living.
I think that's a trap that a lot of nonprofits unfortunately fall into, that, they have this vision and the passion and the fortitude, but they run their organizations like not like a business.
100%.
And then the next thing you know, your budget doesn't work and the funding's not coming, and you're not retaining your staff, and your messaging isn't getting out properly. And so without that, you fail. And so your consulting, I'm sure, will be very successful.
One of the gentlemen that had probably the greatest influence in my career, I was in my first nonprofit job. And back then, IBM had this program called Executives on Loan. Aging executives, 2-3 years away from retirement, they'd pay their salary, and then they'd farm them out to nonprofits. And so his name was Frank Klein from IBM World Headquarters. And he sat me down one day, and I'm like 26 years old. Jim, don't fall in love with your charity. Businesses do business things for business reasons. Their philanthropy is tied to their organizational goals. You help them achieve those goals, they'll help you. Otherwise, they'll go find another charity, because there's 10,000 worthwhile charities. And I've used that my whole career. I've heard hundreds of times, Jim, we've never heard that from anybody from a nonprofit. You just say, just help us because we're a good cause. But there's so many good causes. So especially sponsorships and corporate, you enter in as a business partnership, ROI, what can I do to help them achieve their goals? Because then I know I'll get what I need.
Yeah, well, that's really important. I mean, we're doing that with my foundation, the San Diego Harbor Police Foundation, with our human trafficking initiative and our other platforms that we're involved in.
Great.
We're not just going out and looking for financial support. We're developing partnerships, long-term lasting relationships based on you and me, someone else, another person, and myself and my board and our people, so that there's meaning to what it is that we're doing, as opposed to with the United Way, they used to just have that form available for their employees, and you just check the box on the charities that you wanted to support, which of course is important. I'm not trying to deny that, but what's more important is that you find someone who's willing to invest in what it is you're doing, because they're passionate about it.
It's an investment, and you really nailed it when you said long term. So the thing I wanted a partnership where they saw it was beneficial. So the next year they want to do it again. So, instead of having to chase after that money and fill that hole, when I have that money, they're coming back every year. Then I build. And that's how I build an organization. And, we built the food bank from 5 million cash to 14 million and $100 million corporation. And a lot of that had to do with long-term partnerships that you could depend on, you know, these groups year in and year out, because you give as good as you get.
Yeah.
You got to take care of them.
Yeah, that's very true. You said something just a little earlier about the Burn Institute, that there was a fractured relationship between the burn providers and the Burn Institute. What was that about?
Well, it predated me, so luckily I didn't cause it.
Right.
But you know, the Burn Institute was founded to start the Burn Center. But I think back then there was a perception that the Burn Institute would just become like the foundation for the Burn Center. But the board then said, no, we're going to be our own thing and do our own thing, and we're going to support you, but we're going to do other things. And I think the Burn Center felt a level of maybe entitlement, that they thought, well, you should just be supporting everything we do. So money always became, that's the ugly thing, right? That always became the issue. And then I kind of inherited that. And so, you know, it took me a little while. And plus I was thrust into being a CEO at the age of 33 on my 33rd birthday. And I go meet with the director of the Burn Center at the time. And he was one of the most applauded, more research papers. I mean, one of the top burn surgeons in the world, but he was a mean SOB and tenacious. And I'm like 33 and I'm meeting with him. And I'm like, and I was like a little nervous going into the meeting. And I thought, well, you know what, if you can't do this, you can't be in the job. So suck it up, buddy. Put your big boy pants on. And I went in and it went quite well. And then, you know, we worked through some things, and then, you know, he unfortunately passed away, and then new leadership, we were able to kind of find a way, you know, to help them. Yeah. And that's kind of what we did. We helped them get their burn certification for prevention and support and all that. And we really created that partnership. And then suddenly we were of value.
Outstanding. Yeah. So you also recently have created an organization, sort of a grassroots for CEOs for nonprofits called philodemo.
Yep. Philodemo.
So that rolls right off. It sounds very
unless you're Greek. Yeah, unless you're Greek, it does not roll off your tongue.
So tell me about it.
Well, you know, one of the things that I've noticed through my career, and before I left the food bank, I was mentoring about a half dozen nonprofit CEOs, just a legacy, didn't charge them. It was just something that I was just, you enjoy that.
I'd be one of those.
There were people who stopped when I was a young CEO to help me. So I wanted to pay that back. Right. So then, you know, I was involved with a group called Sage, which is a bit like Vistage, but it's a CEO group. But that Sage, it's 10 for-profit CEOs and one nonprofit CEO. And I was the nonprofit CEO. And to get a lot of benefit from that, because there's a camaraderie of CEOs.
Sure.
And then you take that to the nonprofit. And if there's any nonprofit CEOs listening right now, they will be nodding their heads when I say what I'm about to say, is that the journey of a nonprofit CEO is so unique. And the only person that knows that same journey is another nonprofit CEO, because it's such an unusual existence. You work for a board or volunteers who aren't necessarily experts in what you do, yet they make the most important decisions. And so you manage your board without your board knowing they're being managed, but deep down they know they're being managed and want to be managed. And that's not in a book, right? That is a finesse. That is an art form all in itself. And then you raise, you know, every dollar you spend, you have to raise. And so it's just a very unique existence. So in my consulting business, I wanted to put together a group of just nonprofit CEOs, and then we'll meet and you sign an NDA, and then you can bring personal or professional issues, and we'll work through those and help you be there. And if nothing else, I feel like I'm not on my journey alone, and as there's a camaraderie, it's almost like a support group type of thing. So we're just getting it off the ground, but I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I'm handpicking, you know, I want people that I like in the group, and somehow you made it in. So I don't know.
I don't know how that happened.
No.
You can always reject.
Yeah, you just showed up.
I think I did.
But it's
knocking on the door until you answered.
Philodemo is a word that I'm Greek, and a good friend of mine who was the head of the county medical director, and he's a fellow Greek, and he told me this word of philodemo, and your listeners can listen to it. It's the word that has no definition that means everything, and it's really about service before self, giving back to your community, giving back to your you know, your country, your pride of family, and giving to people without asking for anything in return. And you cannot be Greek unless you have philodemo. And I thought anybody who works in nonprofit has philodemo.
Loyalty.
Yeah.
All of that.
Character, everything.
Fidelity. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. I did get to go to the first meeting, and it was very eventful.
Yeah.
You know, just a lot of important conversations going on. So You're a healthy looking guy. I mean, what do you do to stay that way?
Well, I got a couple dogs, and my wife and I walk every morning because she's my business partner with the consulting. So that's kind of our staff meeting too. We go through everything, and then I'm a avid golfer.
Oh,
So I'm that's one nice thing about the consulting. I'm trying to play a couple times a week and get out during the week and do that. And you know, I like to garden. I've rediscovered that during COVID because there was nothing else to do.
right. You're stuck.
But walking and golfing, I think primarily do that. So you know, you get tan when you're on the golf course.
Exactly. So what does it cost to play around a golf these days?
Depends on where you go, and we're pretty prudent that way because you got to look around because golf became insanely popular during COVID. It was one of the few things people could do. So suddenly courses that cost $80 on a weekend suddenly were like $150.
Wow.
Because they could get it. So I would say most courses on a weekend it's going to be $75 to $80. Some are very expensive, and then during the week maybe 40 or 50 maybe. So it's not too bad.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad. And San Diego has like 130 public courses, so you really don't have to join a private country club. You can go out and play some good courses, and not too bad.
Oh, that's great. So if you have some wisdom to impart to our listeners that include, I'm sure, a lot of nonprofit employees, staff, and volunteers, what would that be?
Well, be proud of what you do because you're special. And anybody who works in nonprofit, you're different from the rest because you've given up, you know, big money and you're going to work shorter hour or longer hours and high stress and low pay, but the satisfaction is huge. And then for, you know, people who are looking to make a difference in the world financially, the most important thing you can do for a nonprofit is donate money. Make sure you do your research and look at their 990 and look at their audit and make sure they're a good organization.
What's a 990?
That is the tax form that all nonprofits, if they're in legal compliance, have to fill out, and it'll show what the highest paid people are, what percentage of their funding goes directly to program services. You know, the gold standard is by 80%. You want a nonprofit that at least has 80% dollars of program services. There's a lot of big name ones that are way below that. You'd be kind of surprised. But you know, nonprofits really are the backbone of any society. We're doing things, and probably nothing against government programs because the government does great things and they support great organizations and all that. But I think nonprofits are more accountable and they're more reliable because we are under such scrutiny by the public, by the IRS, by everybody, donors or what have you. So you have a higher standard because you have to.
Right.
And that, to me, that's why I'm such a big fan of nonprofit organizations, because we are held to a higher standard.
Yeah, that's really, really useful information. Well, I want to thank you for coming here today. It's been really a lot of fun. I learned a few things. Surprise, surprise. I want to thank my supporters here, the San Diego Harbor Police Foundation, for funding and allowing me to do this program. And I encourage everyone who's watching to push it out to your friends and family, because the greater good is what Jim represents. And so thank you very much for your time.
Well, thanks so much, Jeff. This was a lot of fun.
Good. Glad you liked it.